Nanny claps back at the heir's insults, and his father invites her to a special dinner. Emily Johnson had just finished arranging the last plates on the dining room table when she felt the weight of the uncomfortable silence hanging over the mansion. 2 years working in that house had taught her to recognize the storm warnings that preceded family meals. That's when a loud crash echoed through the room. The white porcelain plate shattered on the marble floor, scattering pieces everywhere. "You need to learn your place in this house," said Tyler Harrison, the businessman's only son, without even looking at her. The young man, barely over 25, was sitting at the table with a posture Emily knew well. Arms crossed, chin raised, that air of superiority he carried like a protective cloak against the world. "Mr. Tyler, I'll get another plate," Emily began to speak, keeping her voice calm as she always did. "No, you'll clean that up first. You need to understand this isn't your home." Emily felt something different that night. Maybe it was the accumulated exhaustion of 2 years enduring silent humiliations. Maybe it was the memory of the promise she had made, or maybe it was simply the limit every person has, even those who choose to endure in silence. "You don't deserve the father you have," the words came out of her mouth before she could think better of it. The silence that followed was different, heavy, thick. From the corners of the room, Emily could feel the stares of the other staff on her. Mrs. Ruth, the elderly housekeeper who had worked there for over 30 years, widened her eyes. Carl, the driver who was passing through the hallway, stopped at the door with his mouth slightly open. Tyler rose from his chair slowly, as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. "What did you say?" Emily took a deep breath. There was no turning back now. "I said you don't deserve the father you have. Mr. Richard is a good man, hard-working, who built everything he has with honesty. And you, who received everything handed to you on a silver platter, don't know how to do anything but mistreat the people who work here. You're fired." Tyler walked toward her, his face red with anger. "No, she's not," a deep, firm voice came from the office door. Richard Harrison was standing at the entrance, his reading glasses still in his hands. The 52-year-old man had a presence that filled any room. Tall, graying hair at the temples, broad shoulders that carried not only the family business, but also the weight of raising a son alone for the past 3 years. "Dad, did you hear what this woman said to me?" "I heard. And I also heard what you said before. Tyler, come here." Richard's tone brooked no argument. Tyler hesitated for a moment before walking toward his father, leaving Emily standing in the middle of the room with the porcelain shards at her feet. Richard turned to her. "Emily, you can leave that. Mrs. Ruth will take care of it. Go rest." "Mr. Richard, No need to explain anything now. Go rest." Emily nodded and left the room with her legs trembling. As she walked down the hallway toward the small room she occupied at the back of the house, she could hear Richard's voice echoing through the mansion. "Tyler, in my office. Now." The door closed with a dull thud, and Emily knew that night would change everything. In the simple but clean small room she had called home for 2 years, Emily sat on the bed and let her hands tremble freely. What had she done? Confronting Tyler like that wasn't part of the plan. It wasn't part of the promise. She got up and opened the drawer of the small dresser beside the bed. Underneath, protected by an old shirt, was the letter. The paper already yellowed with time, the delicate, shaky handwriting she knew so well. Emily didn't need to open it to know what was written. I had read those words so many times that I knew them by heart. But even so, she unfolded the paper carefully and let her eyes run over the lines. "Emily, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer here. I want you to know that these months when you took care of me in the hospital were the most comforting since I discovered the illness. You treated me not as an employer, but as a friend. We talked about everything, and I could trust you with secrets I didn't even tell my husband. That's why I have a request. My son Tyler is lost. He can't handle the loss, and I fear what he might become. Richard, my husband, is a good man, but he's so immersed in his own grief that he can't see that our son is drowning too. I need you to take care of them. Not as an employee, but as someone who cares. I know it's a lot to ask, but you told me you have no family, So please be their family when I can no longer be there. I trust you, Emily. Take care of my husband and my son. They will need it." With affection and gratitude, Catherine Harrison tears streamed down Emily's face as she refolded the letter. Catherine had passed away 3 years ago, but the promise was still alive. That's why Emily had accepted the babysitter position, even though she had a degree in psychology. That's why she endured Tyler's humiliations in silence. That's why she remained in that house when she could be working at any clinic in the city. But that night something had changed. Something inside her had broken along with that porcelain plate. A soft knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Emily? It's Ruth. May I come in?" "Of course, Mrs. Ruth." The elderly housekeeper entered the room with 2 cups of tea. Her wrinkled face carried a maternal expression that Emily had learned to appreciate. "I thought you might need this." Ruth handed her a cup and sat beside her on the bed. "And someone to talk to." "I shouldn't have spoken that way, Mrs. Ruth." "Why not? Someone needed to say that to that boy. And mind you, I've known Tyler since he was born. I saw when he was a sweet child, always smiling, always helping. What he became after Mrs. Catherine passed away, that's not the real Tyler. It's the pain speaking." Emily took a sip of the hot tea, feeling the liquid warm her chest. What was he like before? Ruth smiled with distant eyes, like someone revisiting cherished memories. "Tyler was 12 when I started working here. He was a smart boy, liked to help around the house. Whenever I was carrying something heavy, he would appear out of nowhere to help. He said he wanted to be strong like his father. Catherine would laugh and say he was already strong, but in a different way. Strong in the heart. What happened? Mrs. Catherine's illness. It was too fast, you know. She found out, and within 6 months she was gone. Tyler couldn't process it. He became angry at the world. He started treating everyone badly, especially his father. I think he blamed Mr. Richard for not being able to save his mother, even though we all knew nothing could have been done." Emily nodded silently. She knew that kind of pain well, that irrational anger against the world when we lose someone we love. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. "Mrs. Ruth, may I ask you something?" "Of course, my dear." "Did you know that I used to visit Mrs. Catherine in the hospital?" Ruth's face lit up with a gentle smile. "Of course I knew. Mrs. Catherine told me. She was so happy when you visited. She said you were like a daughter to her. You visited every day after work, didn't you? Even when you were still working at that clinic downtown." Emily felt a lump in her throat. "I was very fond of her. When she first came to me to talk about the symptoms, I didn't imagine it would be the beginning of such a beautiful friendship. She was different. She didn't treat me like just any professional. We talked about everything. Did she tell you about the request?" "She did. And she gave me this letter." Emily showed the yellowed paper. Ruth took the letter carefully, as if holding something sacred. Her eyes filled with tears as she recognized the handwriting of her former employer. "I remember the day she wrote this. It was 1 week before she passed away. She asked for paper and pen and spent nearly an hour writing. When she finished, she called me and asked me to give this letter to you on the day of the funeral. You delivered it. I delivered it because she trusted me, and she trusted you too. Emily, you've honored that promise until now. These 2 years you've been here, even with Tyler treating you poorly, even earning less than you would at any clinic, you stayed. I made a promise. You did. And today, for the first time, you showed that boy there are limits. You know what I think? I think Catherine would be proud of you." The two remained silent for several minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. The tea grew cold in their cups as the night deepened outside. "What do you think will happen now?" Emily asked quietly. "I think Mr. Richard will finally pay attention. He's a good man, but he's been blind for too long. He works too much, hides in business to avoid feeling the pain of loss. And meanwhile, his son is crying for help the only way he knows how, by mistreating everyone around him. I shouldn't have said that in front of the other staff. No, you should have. Do you know why? Because now everyone will know there's someone in this house who isn't afraid to speak the truth. And the truth, my dear, sometimes needs to be said out loud so people can wake up. Ruth stood up and walked toward the door, but stopped before leaving. Emily, you can trust Mr. Richard. He's fair. And deep down, even if he doesn't show it, he knows you're right about Tyler. After Ruth left, Emily stayed awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what she had done. She didn't regret her words, but she feared the consequences. What if Richard fired her anyway? What if her promise to Catherine remained unfulfilled? Meanwhile, a different conversation was happening in the upstairs office. Tyler was sitting in the leather armchair facing his father's desk, his arms still crossed, his face red with anger. Richard was standing by the window looking at the garden illuminated by the outdoor lights. "Aren't you going to fire her?" Tyler broke the silence. "No." "Why?" "She disrespected me in front of everyone." Richard turned slowly to face his son. "And you? What did you do?" You deliberately threw a plate on the floor to humiliate an employee who's worked here for 2 years. An employee who never complained, never missed a day, never did anything but work well. And you think I don't know how you treat the people in this house?" Tyler looked away. "They're paid for it. Paid to be humiliated? Paid to be treated as if they're less than you?" "I don't treat anyone badly." "No? Then explain to me what happened with Jessica, that girl who worked in the kitchen. Why did she quit all of a sudden?" Tyler stayed silent. "She left because you made inappropriate comments about her clothes, and when she complained to me, I did nothing because I was too busy with the company, but Ruth told me the truth afterward. I was joking." "Joking? Tyler, you're not 15 anymore. You're a grown man, the son of a respected businessman in this city. Your actions have consequences." "Consequences? You want to talk about consequences?" Tyler rose from the armchair, his voice rising in tone. "Where are the consequences for you never being home, for you working late every day, for you hiding behind this company instead of facing reality?" Richard felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about Mom. I'm talking about how you disappeared after she was gone. I'm talking about how you abandoned me." "I never abandoned you." "No. Then where were you for the last 3 years? Because all I ever saw was you leaving early in the morning and coming back at night, always with more work, always with more meetings, always with more excuses not to be present." Tyler's voice cracked at the end of the sentence, and Richard noticed something he hadn't seen in a long time. Tears in his son's eyes. "Tyler, no. Don't use that tone now. Do you want to know why I treat the people who work here badly? Because they're here. They see you more than I do. They have dinner with you, talk with you, while I'm alone in this huge house remembering Mom every day." Richard felt his own tears threatening to fall. He approached his son, but Tyler took a step back. "And you know what's worse? That Emily. She knew Mom. They were friends or something. And you don't even notice. You don't even see that she has the same habits Mom had. The way she arranges the flowers in the living room vase, the way she folds the towels. Even the perfume she wears sometimes reminds me of Mom's perfume." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I hate looking at her, because she reminds me of everything I lost. And you? You don't even notice. You're so blinded by your own pain that you can't see mine." Tyler stormed out of the office, slamming the door, leaving Richard alone with his thoughts. The businessman sat down heavily in the chair and buried his face in his hands. Catherine. How he missed her. How he wished she were there to tell him what to do, as she always did. She always knew how to handle Tyler better than he did. She always knew the right words, the right tone, the right moment. And now, 3 years later, Richard realized he had failed. He had failed as a father by trying to escape the pain through work. He had failed as a husband by not honoring Catherine's memory the right way. He had failed as a human being by not noticing his own son's suffering. Richard's mind went back to what Tyler had said about Emily. Did she know Catherine? How? And why had he never noticed? Richard stood up and went to the file where he kept all the employees' documents. He searched for Emily Johnson's folder and opened it curiously. Full name Emily Johnson Smith, age 32. Education, psychology from the State University. Previous experience, 5 years at a private clinic downtown. Richard stopped at the references section. There was only one name, Catherine Harrison. His heart raced. Had Catherine been Emily's reference to work there? How had he not noticed that when he hired the girl? Thinking back, he remembered he had delegated the hiring to Mrs. Ruth. He was too busy with a corporate merger at the time. Richard closed the folder and returned to the window. Down below in the garden he could see the light in Emily's small room still on. What else didn't he know about that woman? And what did Catherine have to do with all this? He decided that the next day he would have a conversation with Emily. But first he needed to talk to Tyler again. He needed to fix the relationship with his son before it was too late. The night wore on, and the Harrison mansion fell silent, each in their own room, dealing with their own reflections and open wounds. Emily woke up early the next day with a strange feeling in her chest. Half of her expected to find a dismissal letter under the door. The other half hoped it had all just been a nightmare. But when she opened the door to start her workday, she found Ruth in the hallway with an expression she couldn't decipher. "Mr. Richard wants to speak with you," said the housekeeper. "He's in the library." Now. Emily felt her heart race. She quickly straightened her uniform, pinned up her hair, and walked through the mansion's corridors toward the library. Each step felt heavier than the last. The library was one of the most beautiful rooms in the house. Walls covered with dark wood shelves filled with books of all kinds. A rolling ladder provided access to the higher volumes. There were 2 leather armchairs near the fireplace and a large table in the center where Richard usually worked on weekends. He was standing by the window when Emily entered, his hands in his dress pants pockets, his shoulders slightly hunched. There was something different about him that morning, a vulnerability Emily had never seen before. "Mr. Richard, Mrs. Ruth said you wanted to speak with me." Richard turned slowly. His dark brown eyes were tired, as if he hadn't slept well. "Emily, please sit down," he indicated one of the armchairs. Emily obeyed, keeping her hands clasped in her lap, trying to control her nervousness. Richard sat in the armchair opposite and remained silent for a few seconds, as if choosing the right words. "I want to apologize," he finally said. Emily blinked, surprised. "Sir?" "I want to apologize for my son's behavior, and more than that, I want to apologize for allowing that behavior to continue for so long. I should have acted sooner." "Mr. Richard, I shouldn't have said that in front of everyone. It was disrespectful of me." "It was honesty on your part," Richard corrected, "and honesty is something rare these days, especially in this house where everyone has been walking on eggshells for 3 years. Emily didn't know what to say. "I looked at your file last night," Richard continued. "I saw that my wife was your reference when you were hired here." Emily's heart raced. She was. "Did you know Catherine?" "I did." "How?" Emily took a deep breath. The time had come to tell the truth. "I worked at a private clinic downtown. Mrs. Catherine went there because she was having some symptoms and wanted to talk to a professional before seeing a doctor. She was afraid it might be something serious." Richard leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Go on." "We talked a lot that first day. She told me about the family, about you, about Tyler. She said she was worried because the symptoms were similar to what her mother had years before, which ended up being a serious illness. I advised her to see a doctor as soon as possible. And then she found out. The doctors confirmed it. It was the same illness that had taken her mother. When Catherine started treatment, she asked if I could visit her at the hospital from time to time. She said she felt more comfortable talking with me than with the nurses there. And you went?" "I did. Every day after my shift at the clinic. Sometimes it was just half an hour, other times 2, 3 hours. We talked about everything, about her life, about mine, about dreams and regrets." Richard's eyes began to glisten with unshed tears. "Why didn't I know about this?" "Because Mrs. Catherine asked me not to tell. She said you were already too overwhelmed with work and taking care of Tyler. She said those moments we spent together were just hers, a time where she didn't have to be strong for anyone. She could just be herself." Richard ran his hand over his face, trying to control his emotion. And the visits were without charging overtime. Ruth told me that yesterday. They were. I wasn't going there as a professional. I was going as a friend. Why? You barely knew my wife. Emily smiled sadly. Because I understood what she was feeling. My mother went through the same thing when I was 15. I saw it all. The fear, the pain, the feeling of losing control of your own life. And I had no one to help me process all that at the time. So when I met Mrs. Catherine, I saw an opportunity to do for her what I wish someone had done for my mother. Your mother also passed. She did. 17 years ago. And your father? I never met him. I was raised only by my mother, and when she was gone, I went to live with an aunt who barely knew me. It was hard. That's why I understand Tyler's pain. I understand what it's like to lose someone so important and not know how to deal with it. Richard stood up and walked to the window again, his back turned to Emily. Catherine asked me for something before she left, he said quietly. She asked me to take good care of Tyler, not to let the pain consume me, not to hide in my work. I failed in all those things. Mr. Richard, no, let me finish. I failed as a father. I failed as a husband by not honoring what Catherine asked of me. And I failed as a human being by not realizing that my son was suffering as much as I was. You were suffering too. Everyone deals with pain differently. But the way I dealt with it hurt my son. Tyler is right when he says I abandoned him. It may not have been physical, but it was emotional. I wasn't there when he needed me. Emily stood up and approached Richard. But you still have time. Tyler is still here. He's lost, he's angry, but he's still here. And as long as there's life, there's a chance to fix things. Richard turned to her, and for the first time, Emily saw tears streaming down the businessman's face. How? How do I fix this? By starting to be present. Truly, not just physically, but emotionally. Tyler needs his father. He needs to know he's not alone in this pain. He hates me. No, he doesn't hate you. He's angry because he cares. If he didn't care, he wouldn't be screaming for attention like that. His behavior is a cry for help. Richard took a deep breath, trying to compose himself. There's one more thing I need to know, he said. Why did you agree to work here? A woman with your education and experience could be earning much more at any clinic. Why choose to be a nanny in a house where the only baby is a 25-year-old man? Emily hesitated. It was time to show the letter. Because Mrs. Catherine asked me to. What do you mean? Emily took the envelope from her uniform pocket. She had brought it with her, knowing she might need it. She gave me this a week before she left, asked me to read it only after. And when I read it, I understood what she wanted. She asked me to take care of you and Tyler. Richard took the letter with trembling hands and began to read. As his eyes moved over the lines written by his wife, his tears fell more freely. When he finished, he hugged the letter to his chest and let himself cry. Emily stayed there, respecting the man's moment of pain before her. She knew those tears had been trapped for a long time, and they needed to come out. After a few minutes, Richard composed himself and returned the letter to Emily. She knew you well, he said with a choked voice. She knew you would honor that promise. I try. But I confess it's been difficult. Tyler, I know, and it's my fault. But let's change that. The two of us. Together. The two of us? Emily, I want to propose something. Tonight I'd like to have dinner with you. Not here at the house, but at a restaurant. I want to talk more, understand better who the woman is that my wife trusted so much, and I want to hear your ideas about how we can help Tyler. Emily was surprised. Mr. Richard, I don't think that's appropriate. Please, it's nothing romantic or inappropriate. It's just a conversation between two people trying to honor the memory of someone they loved, and who want to help a lost young man find his way back. Emily thought for a moment. It could be a good opportunity to really talk about Tyler and how to help him. All right, but on one condition. What? After this dinner, you need to have dinner with Tyler. There's no point in us talking if you don't put into practice what we decide. Richard smiled for the first time that morning. Deal. The news of the dinner between Richard and Emily spread through the house before breakfast was even over. Carl mentioned it to Mrs. Ruth, who mentioned it to the other staff, and soon everyone was talking about it. Tyler heard the comments when he came down for afternoon coffee. His head was aching after a sleepless night, and the last thing he wanted was to hear gossip about the house. "Oh, I think that's so beautiful," said Betty the cook. "The master deserves to be happy again." "It's nothing like that," Mrs. Ruth corrected. "It's just a dinner to talk about young Tyler." "I see, it always starts that way," Betty chuckled. Tyler felt his blood boil. He entered the kitchen so forcefully that the two women were startled. "What are you talking about?" "Mr. Tyler, What are you talking about?" he repeated, his voice louder. "Your father is having dinner with Emily tonight," Mrs. Ruth replied calmly. "To talk about how to help you." "Help me? I don't need help. And I certainly don't need that manipulator getting close to my father with ulterior motives." "Ulterior motives?" Mrs. Ruth raised an eyebrow. "Emily doesn't have ulterior motives. She just wants to help." "Of course she does. Can't you see? She's getting close to my father, pretending to care, all to get a better life. It's the perfect plan. Work here as a nanny, gain everyone's trust, and now hit on the rich widower." "Tyler," Richard's voice echoed through the kitchen. "In my office." "Now." Tyler turned and saw his father standing in the doorway, his face serious. Without another word, he headed to the office for the second time in less than 24 hours. When the door closed, Richard turned to his son with an expression Tyler hadn't seen in a long time. It wasn't anger. It was disappointment. "Sit down." "Dad, I can explain." "Sit down," Richard repeated. Tyler sat but maintained a defensive posture. "I'm going to tell you something you don't know," Richard began. "Emily knew your mother. They were friends. Emily visited your mother in the hospital every day without charging anything, just because she cared. And before passing, your mother wrote a letter to Emily asking her to take care of us, of me and you." Tyler fell silent, processing the information. "You're lying." "I'm not. I saw the letter. I recognized your mother's handwriting. Emily is here not for the money, but because she made a promise to care for a family that isn't hers, to endure humiliation from a spoiled young man who can't handle his own pain, to work earning less than she could anywhere else. If she knew Mom, why did she never say anything?" "Because your mother asked her not to. Because your mother wanted Emily to be accepted here for who she is, not because of the connection between them." Tyler stood up and began pacing back and forth. No, that doesn't make sense. If she really cared about Mom, why did she take so long to come work here? Mom had been gone for a year when she arrived. Because she needed time to process her own grief, and because she needed to prepare for the promise she had made. "That's a lie. You're defending her because she's manipulating you too." "Or maybe," Richard said calmly, "I'm defending her because for the first time in 3 years, someone had the courage to tell me the truth. You heard what she said yesterday, that you're not worthy of the father you have." And she was right. Tyler stopped walking and stared at his father. "Right? Right. Because I've been failing as a father. I've failed to be present, to help you deal with the pain, to show you that you're not alone. But she was also right about you. You're not honoring your mother's memory with this behavior. Your mother was kind, generous, always treated everyone with respect. And you? You've become someone she wouldn't recognize." The words hit Tyler like punches. He felt tears burning his eyes but refused to let them fall. "You have no right to say that." "I do. I'm your father. And as your father, it's my responsibility to show you when you're wrong. And you're wrong, Tyler. You've been wrong for a long time, and I've been too cowardly to admit it before. So what do you want me to do? That I be happy with this woman trying to replace Mom?" "No one is trying to replace your mother. Emily doesn't want to replace anyone. She just wants to keep a promise, and she's doing it the best way she can, despite you making everything more difficult." Tyler felt something break inside him. All the anger, all the pain, all the resentment he had stored for 3 years began to overflow. "I don't want her here. I don't want to see her way of arranging things like Mom used to. I don't want to smell her perfume that reminds me of Mom. I don't want to have anyone else I could lose." The last sentence came out as a cry of pain, and Tyler finally let the tears fall. He sank into the armchair and covered his face with his hands, sobbing as he hadn't since the night Catherine had left. Richard felt his own heart break. He approached his son and for the first time in 3 years truly hugged him. It wasn't a quick, formal hug. It was a father's hug, the kind that makes you feel safe even when the world is falling apart. "You're not going to lose anyone," Richard murmured. "I'm here. I always have been, even when it seemed like I wasn't. And I'm not going anywhere." "I miss her so much." Tyler sobbed against his father's shoulder. "Me too, son. Every day. But do you know what she would say if she were here now?" "What?" "She would tell us to stop wasting the time we have together. She would tell us to honor her memory by being better people. She would tell us to open our hearts to those who want to help us." Tyler pulled back a little and wiped his face with his shirt sleeve. "How can you be so strong?" "I'm not strong, Tyler. I just pretend to be. Deep down, I'm just as lost as you. But maybe it's time we stop pretending and start really dealing with this pain, together." Father and son stayed in the office for over an hour, talking honestly for the first time since Catherine had left. Richard told him how hard it was to enter the empty room every night, how he sometimes still expected to see Catherine in the kitchen making breakfast, how the smell of her perfume in the closet made him cry. Tyler, in turn, admitted that he was afraid of forgetting his mother's voice, that he sometimes woke up in the middle of the night thinking he had heard her calling, that he couldn't look at pictures of her without feeling his chest tighten. It was a painful conversation, but necessary. And when they finally left the office, something had changed between them. It wasn't a miraculous cure. The pain was still there, but now at least they weren't dealing with it alone. Emily watched from afar when father and son left the office. She could see from both their faces that they had cried, but there was also something different, a lightness that wasn't there before. Ruth appeared by her side. "I think something has changed," the housekeeper said with a smile. "I hope so," Emily replied. That evening, Richard took Emily to dinner at a quiet restaurant in the neighboring district. It was a discreet place, not too busy, perfect for a serious conversation. They sat at a table in the back, away from curious eyes. Richard ordered wine, but Emily preferred juice. She never liked to drink when she needed to keep a clear head. "Thank you for agreeing to come," Richard began after the waiter brought their drinks. "I should thank you for the opportunity to talk more. Emily, I need to know. Do you really think there's hope for Tyler?" Emily took a sip of her juice before answering. "There is hope for everyone, Mr. Richard. Tyler is not a bad person. He is a hurt person, and hurt people sometimes hurt others because they don't know how to deal with their own pain. How did you learn to be so wise at just 32? I learned through pain. When I lost my mother, I was Tyler's age. I was angry at the world. I treated my aunt badly, who was only trying to help me. I drank, hung out with the wrong crowd. I was destroying myself. What changed? One day, my aunt gave me the letter my mother had written for me before she passed. She had kept it waiting for the right moment. And when I read that letter, I understood how much I was wasting the life my mother had fought so hard to give me. I decided to change. It was hard, but I decided. And is that why you studied psychology? Yes. I wanted to understand pain, both my own and others. I wanted to help people who were going through the same thing I had been through. And over the years, I realized that the best way to honor my mother was by doing what she would have done, taking care of people. Richard was silent for a moment, processing her words. Catherine chose well when she trusted you. Emily smiled. She was special. She had a way of making you feel important, you know? Even when she was suffering, she always asked how I was, if I needed anything. She was genuine. She really was. That was one of the reasons I fell in love with her. Catherine had a huge heart. And you? How have you been dealing with the loss? The question caught Richard by surprise. No one had asked him that directly. Everyone assumed he was fine because he kept working, because he stayed strong, because he didn't show weakness. Honestly, I haven't been dealing well. I hide in work because there I know exactly what to do. I know how to solve problems, how to make decisions, how to keep everything running. But at home I feel lost. I don't know how to be a father without Catherine by my side. I don't know how to fill the void she left. You don't need to fill it. That void will always be there. The pain of loss never completely disappears, but we learn to live with it. We learn to carry that weight in a way that doesn't break us. How? By accepting help. By being honest about your feelings, allowing yourself to cry when you need to, and most importantly, honoring the memory of the person who is gone by being the best version of yourself. The best version of myself, Richard repeated. I don't know if I know who that person is, but you can find out, and Tyler can find out who he really is too. But for that, both of you need to stop running from the pain and start facing it head-on. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The conversation continued throughout the dinner. Richard told stories about Catherine, about how they met, about the early years of marriage, about the joy of having Tyler. Emily, in turn, shared memories of the conversations she had with Catherine in the hospital, revealing details that Richard didn't know. She once told me her biggest regret was not having more children, Emily recounted. She said she always wanted a house full of kids, but after Tyler, there were complications, and it wasn't possible anymore. I didn't know she felt that way. She thought about it a lot, but she said she had made peace with it because she had you and Tyler. She said the two of you were all she needed to be happy. I failed her. I promised I would take good care of Tyler, and look what he became. But there's still time to change that. You saw today that it's possible to connect with Tyler. The conversation you had in the office was a start. It was. But I don't know how to continue from here. I don't know how to keep that connection without him closing all the doors again. By being consistent, showing him that you're present not just today, but every day. And maybe the three of us could have dinner together sometimes. It doesn't have to be every day, but once a week, for example. A moment to be together, talk, rebuild the bonds. Richard considered the idea. Do you think he would accept? I think if you propose it the right way, he might. Tyler has been screaming for attention for a long time. Now that he's finally gotten it, I don't think he'll waste the chance. When they returned home that night, Tyler was in the living room, pretending to watch television, but Emily noticed he was watching them out of the corner of his eye when they entered. Richard stopped at the living room door. Tyler, can we talk? The young man turned off the television and turned to face them. About what? About what we discussed today, and about an idea Emily had. Tyler looked at Emily with an expression she couldn't decipher. It wasn't anger, but it wasn't exactly friendly either. Emily, can you tell him? Richard asked. Emily took a deep breath. I was thinking that maybe you two, the three of us, could have dinner together once a week. It doesn't have to be anything formal. Just a moment for us to talk, to really connect as a family. Family? Tyler repeated with irony. You're not part of our family. Tyler, Richard scolded. No, he's right, Emily interrupted. I'm not family, but I care about both of you, and I know your mother would have liked to see you together, talking, taking care of each other. So yes, I'm not blood family, but I'm here because I want to help. If that bothers you, we can have the dinners just between you two. Tyler looked at Emily for a long moment. There was something different in his eyes. Maybe it was respect. Maybe it was just weariness from all the anger. There's one condition, he finally said. What? Richard asked. That these dinners are really about us talking. No judgments, no criticism. Just honest conversations. Agreed, Emily said. And there's one more thing, Tyler continued. I want to know more about the project my mother had. That social project she always talked about. Emily and Richard exchanged surprised looks. Tyler, I don't know if... Please, Tyler interrupted, and for the first time, his voice didn't sound arrogant. It sounded vulnerable. I want to do something she would be proud of. I want to honor her memory in some way. Emily felt her eyes fill with tears. She had many dreams for this project. She wanted to create a space where people going through difficult times could find support. Not just financial help, but emotional too. Conversations, support groups, activities that would help people reconnect with the joy of living. Why did she never start it? Tyler asked. Because the illness came first, Richard answered, his voice choked. She had all the plans ready, she had even chosen the place, but then the diagnosis came and everything was set aside. Where are the plans? In her office. I never had the courage to touch her things. Can we see? Tyler asked, standing up. Now? Richard hesitated. Catherine's office had been kept untouched for the past 3 years. It was like a sanctuary, a place he avoided entering because it hurt too much. I don't know if I can. I'll go with you, Emily offered. And Tyler too. Let's go together. The three went up the stairs in silence. Catherine's office was at the end of the hallway, the door always closed. When Richard turned the doorknob, the stuffy air from the room invaded his nostrils. The room was exactly as Catherine had left it. The desk still had papers scattered, pens in a ceramic pen holder that Tyler had made for her as a child. The walls were covered with family photos. There were plants that Mrs. Ruth secretly watered to keep them alive. Tyler walked to the desk and gently ran his fingers over the wooden surface. I had forgotten how this place smelled. Richard stood at the door, unable to take another step. Emily gently touched his arm. Breathe. It's just a room. The memories you have of her are in your heart, not here. Encouraged by Emily's words, Richard finally entered. He went to the bookshelf where Catherine kept her most important folders and looked for the one with Hope Project written on the spine. When he opened the folder, he found pages and pages of notes, drawings, budgets, contact lists. Catherine had planned every detail. She really wanted this a lot, Tyler said, reading over his father's shoulder. She did. She said if her life could help other people not feel alone in their most difficult moments, everything would be worth it. Then let's make it happen, Tyler decided. How? We'll make her dream come true, the three of us. I'll provide the manual work, you provide the money, and Emily provides the knowledge. Together we can bring this project to life. Emily and Richard looked at each other, surprised by the determination in Tyler's voice. Are you sure? Richard asked. It's a big commitment. I'm sure. I need to do something meaningful. Something that isn't just wasting my life being bitter and treating people badly. I want that, when I look in the mirror, I see someone my mother would recognize. The following weeks brought intense changes to the Harrison mansion. The weekly dinners started, and gradually the distance between father and son decreased. The initially tense conversations became more natural, more honest. Tyler began studying his mother's project plans with a dedication Emily had never seen in him. He took notes, suggested improvements, researched other similar projects. It was as if he had finally found a purpose. Richard, in turn, began leaving work earlier. He delegated more tasks, trusted his team more, and spent more time at home, not just physically present, but truly present, participating in conversations, listening to his son, sharing his own vulnerabilities. Emily watched everything with a warmed heart. The promise to Catherine was being fulfilled. The family was reconnecting, but she also noticed something more, something that left her confused and a little scared. She was starting to feel part of that family, and more than that, she was starting to develop feelings for Richard that went beyond respect and admiration. It was in the small moments, when he smiled at her during dinners, when he asked for her opinion on some decision related to the project, when their fingers accidentally touched while reaching for the same document, when he looked at her in a way that made her heart race. But Emily constantly scolded herself. She couldn't feel this. She shouldn't feel this. She was there to fulfill a promise, not to develop feelings for the widower. Would it be a betrayal of Catherine's memory? Ruth noticed Emily's confusion before anyone else. "My dear, can I say something?" she asked one afternoon when they were alone in the kitchen. "Of course, Mrs. Ruth. You're falling for the boss." Emily nearly dropped the teacup she was holding. No. There's no use denying it. I've seen the way you look at him, and I've seen the way he looks at you, too. Mrs. Ruth, I can't. It would be wrong. Mrs. Catherine is at peace. She wouldn't want her husband to be alone forever, and she certainly wouldn't want you to blame yourself for feeling something genuine. But I'm here because of the promise I made to her. It would be like taking advantage of the situation. Or it would be fate doing its work. Emily, do you think Catherine chose you just to take care of Tyler? She chose you because she saw in you someone who could do more than that. Someone who could bring light back to this house. And what if it's wrong? And what if it's right? My dear, life is too short to waste chances at happiness. Mrs. Catherine knew that better than anyone. Ruth's words echoed in Emily's mind for days afterward. She tried to keep her distance from Richard, but it was hard when they were working together on the project and having dinner together weekly. It was during one of these dinners that Tyler dropped the bomb. "You two like each other," he said suddenly, in the middle of the meal. Emily choked on her water. Richard stopped with his fork in the air. "Tyler, it's not. No use denying it, Dad. I see the way you look at each other. I'm not blind." "Tyler, this is what? Wrong?" "Because it's not. My mum wouldn't want you to be alone forever." Richard slowly put his fork down on the table. "How can you be sure of that?" "Because she told me. Before she passed, she called me for a talk. She was weak, barely able to speak, but she made a point of telling me a few things. One of them was that she wanted me and you to be happy, even after she was gone. She said she'd be upset if we wasted our lives stuck in the past." "She said that?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "She did. And you know what else she said? That if anyone could make you smile again, that person would be special and deserve to be loved." Tears streamed down Emily's face. She didn't know Catherine had had that conversation with Tyler. "She knew," Emily murmured. "She knew you were suffering. She knew. And she made me promise that I would try to be happy. I've failed at that promise for 3 years, but now I want to try. And part of that trying is admitting that I'm not angry with you anymore, Emily, and I'm not angry with my father anymore." "Tyler!" Richard rose from his chair. "Let me finish, Dad. I know I've been awful. I know I hurt you, hurt Emily, hurt everyone around me. But I'm trying to change. And part of that change is recognizing that if you two really feel something for each other, you deserve to explore that. My mom would have wanted that." The room fell silent for a long moment. Then Richard approached his son and put a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you, son. That means more than you know." "So is it true? Do you feel something?" Richard looked at Emily, whose face was red with embarrassment. "I do," he admitted. "For a while now. Emily is an amazing woman. She's strong, kind, wise. She brought light back to this house. And yes, I've developed feelings for her, but I'm afraid it might be too soon, that it might be disrespectful to your mother's memory." "And you, Emily?" Tyler asked. Emily took a deep breath. The time had come to be honest. "I feel it too, but I'm afraid. Afraid of betraying the promise I made to your mother. Afraid that it's wrong to feel this way when I came here to take care of you. Not for this." "Then let's do something," Tyler said. "Let's forget fear for a moment. Let's forget what should or shouldn't be, and let's just be honest about what we feel, because we've spent 3 years stuck in the past, stuck in pain. Maybe it's time to look to the future." Tyler's words, so mature and sensible, showed how much he had grown in recent weeks. The arrogant and bitter young man was giving way to a compassionate man who was learning to deal with his wounds. "You're right," Richard said. "We need to be honest. Emily, can I speak with you in private after dinner?" Yes. The rest of the meal was consumed in a silence heavy with expectation. When they finished, Tyler stood up and announced he was going to his room, making it clear he was giving space for his father and Emily to talk. Richard and Emily went to the garden. The night was starry, the air fresh. They walked in silence for a few minutes before Richard finally spoke. "Emily, I need to be honest with you. In recent months, you've become very important to me, not just because of the promise you made to Catherine, but because of who you are. You're kind without being weak. You're strong without being harsh. You genuinely care about people, and that's rare. Mr. Richard, please let me finish. I know it's not appropriate. I know you came here as an employee, as someone who made a promise, but I can no longer deny what I feel, and after what Tyler said today, I think I need to be honest with you. I care about you, much more than I should. Emily felt her heart race. I care too, but I'm so afraid, Richard. Afraid of failing Catherine, afraid that this is wrong. It was the first time she called him just by his name, without the Mr. Richard noticed and took a step closer. Catherine was wise. She knew that life goes on even after we're gone. And if she trusted you so much as to ask you to take care of us, I think she would also trust you to do what's right. And what's right is sometimes simply following your heart. But what if it goes wrong? What if this ruins everything? What if it goes right? What if this is exactly what we needed to finally heal? Emily looked at Richard, at that man who had carried so much weight alone for so long. She saw in him not just the successful businessman or the grieving widower. She saw a vulnerable, honest man who was trying his best to be a good father and honor his wife's memory. I need time, she finally said. I need to process all this. I need to be sure it's real, that it's not just gratitude or admiration or anything else besides true love. Richard nodded, understanding. Take all the time you need. I won't pressure you. I just wanted you to know what I feel. They went back inside in silence, each dealing with their own emotions. But something had changed that night. Something had been said that could no longer be ignored. In the following weeks, the social project began to take shape. Tyler dedicated himself to it with a passion that surprised everyone. He started attending meetings with potential partners, visited other similar projects, studied management and volunteering. One afternoon, he returned from one of these visits visibly shaken. What happened? Emily asked when she saw him enter the room where they were working on the plans. I met a girl, Tyler said, sinking into the sofa. A girl? At the community center I visited today. She's a volunteer there. Her name is Olivia, and she's different. Emily smiled. It was the first time she had seen Tyler show genuine interest in someone. Different how? She doesn't care about money. When she asked what I did and I said I was working on a social project, she got excited. She didn't ask anything about my family or how much I make. She only wanted to know more about the project and how she could help. And that impressed you? Very much. You know, I'm so used to people who only get close because of my last name or the family money. But Olivia, she saw me, really saw me, and she didn't seem impressed, just interested. Are you going to see her again? She invited me to help with a social action they're organizing on Saturday. Distribution of food baskets and clothes in a nearby community. I said yes. Emily felt her heart warm. Tyler was finally coming out of his shell, allowing himself to connect with the world in a healthy way. On Saturday, Tyler woke up early, something unusual for him. He dressed in simple clothes as Emily had suggested, and left with an energy he hadn't shown in years. When he returned that afternoon, he was radiant. How was it? Richard asked. It was amazing, Dad. Truly amazing. You know, I had never stopped to think about how many people are living in such difficult situations, and these people, even with little, are so grateful, so generous. There's an elderly lady there who insisted on sharing her lunch with me, even though I said I didn't need to. And Olivia? Tyler smiled, and it was a genuine smile that lit up his entire face. She's wonderful. She works as a teacher during the week and dedicates her weekends to volunteer work. She's 23, lives with her mother and grandmother, and has a contagious energy. Talking to her is easy, you know. I don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not. I'm happy for you, son, Richard said sincerely. She wants to learn about the project. I asked if she could come here one of these days so we could talk more. Of course, bring her whenever you want. Olivia showed up the following week and immediately won everyone in the house over. She was a pretty young woman, but with a simple beauty, with curly hair tied in a high bun, prescription glasses, and a warm smile. She wore modest but clean clothes, and had a way of speaking that showed intelligence and passion for what she did. "It's an honor to be here," she said when Tyler introduced her. "When Tyler told me about the project, I got excited. We need more initiatives like this." Emily talked at length with Olivia and could see the girl's genuineness. She really cared about the social work. She wasn't there for status or connections. She was there because she believed she could make a difference. "She's special," Emily commented to Richard after Olivia left. "Yes. And Tyler is transformed when he's around her. Did you see how he smiled? I hadn't seen him smile like that since before we lost Catherine." Love has that power to make us remember that there's still beauty in the world, even after so much pain. Richard looked at Emily intensely. "Really?" "Yes. So you believe in love, even after everything?" Emily knew he wasn't just talking about Tyler and Olivia anymore. "I do. Maybe I believe even more because of the pain, because I know how precious it is when we find someone who makes us feel alive again." "Emily, I thought a lot about what you said that night in the garden, and about what Tyler said, and I came to the conclusion that I'm afraid not because it's wrong, but because it's right. And when something is right, we're afraid of losing it." "You won't lose me." "How can you be sure?" "Because I'm here. I'm not running away. I'm not hiding. I'm exactly where I want to be, and where I want to be is by your side." Emily felt the tears run down her face. Richard approached and gently wiped them away with his thumb. "Emily Johnson, will you give me the honor of trying to build something together? I'm not asking for eternal promises right now. I'm just asking for a chance to see where these feelings can take us. I want to, but I need you to understand that this scares me a lot." "It scares me too, but sometimes the best things in life are frightening." They stood there, still in the middle of the room, looking at each other, recognizing what was growing between them. It wasn't a cinematic kiss. It wasn't a grand declaration. It was just a moment of honesty, of two wounded hearts acknowledging that perhaps they could heal together. The following months brought profound changes to the Harrison mansion. The social initiative Hope Project began taking concrete shape. They found a suitable space to host the activities, an old commercial building downtown that had been vacant for years. Tyler led the renovation with help from Olivia, who proved not only a dedicated volunteer, but also a perfect partner for him. The two worked side by side, transforming that empty space into something beautiful and welcoming. Emily coordinated the psychological care aspect, recruiting professionals willing to donate a few hours per week to help people who couldn't afford therapy. Richard handled finances and partnerships with other companies. He discovered that using his influence for something beyond the family business was rewarding in a way he'd never experienced. It was during this period that something unexpected happened. Emily began feeling unwell frequently, dizziness, fatigue, nausea. At first, she attributed it to overwork and accumulated exhaustion, but Ruth, with her life experience, recognized the signs. "My dear, you need to see a doctor." "I'm fine, Mrs. Ruth, it's just tiredness." "It's not just tiredness. You've looked unwell for weeks." Reluctantly, Emily scheduled an appointment. Initial tests showed nothing serious, but the doctor requested more specific tests. Emily didn't tell anyone about the appointments. She didn't want to worry Richard or Tyler when they were so involved with the project. But when the results came, she could no longer hide. It was something serious, not the same illness that had taken Catherine, but serious enough to require expensive, lengthy treatment. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Emily sat in the doctor's office, staring at the papers in her hands, unable to fully process what the doctor was saying. How could she be sick? She who had always been so careful with her health, who always exercised, ate well. "How long do I have?" she asked with a trembling voice. "It's not a matter of time," the doctor patiently explained. "With proper treatment, the chances of recovery are good. But you need to start soon, and the treatment isn't cheap." Emily knew she didn't have the money. Her wages as a nanny barely covered her basic needs, and the small amount she sent to the aunt who raised her. She had some savings, but nothing close to what would be necessary. During the following days, Emily tried to maintain an appearance of normalcy. She kept working on the project, having dinner with Richard and Tyler, smiling when necessary, but inside she was falling apart. It was Ruth who first noticed something was wrong. "Emily, what's happening?" "Nothing, Mrs. Ruth." "Don't lie to me, my dear. I know that look. It's the same look Mrs. Catherine had when she discovered her illness." Emily finally broke down. She sat in the kitchen and told Ruth everything. The tests, the diagnosis, the need for treatment, the lack of money. "You need to tell Mr. Richard," Ruth said firmly. "I can't. He'll want to pay, and I can't accept that. It would be like taking advantage of the situation." "Taking advantage? Emily, you dedicated 3 years of your life to caring for this family. You gave up better opportunities, endured humiliations, worked more than you should have, all because of a promise. And now that you need help, you think it would be taking advantage?" "But..." "No buts. You're going to tell him, and if you don't, I will." Emily knew that Ruth was right, but fear paralyzed her. Fear of vulnerability, fear of being a burden, fear that it would change the dynamic they had built. But the decision was taken out of her hands when she fainted during a meeting about the project. One moment she was talking with Richard and Tyler about the opening schedule. The next moment she was on the floor. She woke up in the hospital with Richard holding her hand and Tyler on the other side of the gurney, both with expressions of deep concern. "What happened?" she asked in a weak voice. "You fainted," Richard replied. "And when we brought you here, we found the test results in your bag." Emily felt her heart sink. They knew. "Why didn't you tell us?" Tyler asked, and there was hurt in his voice. "I didn't want to worry you." "Didn't want to worry?" Richard raised his voice, something rare for him. "Emily, you're sick. You need treatment. And you thought you shouldn't tell us. I didn't want to be a burden." "A burden?" Now it was Tyler who raised his voice. "You, who took care of us for 3 years, who endured everything in silence, who dedicated your life to a promise, think you would be a burden? Emily, your family." Tyler's words hit her hard. Family. She had so little of it in life that she had forgotten what it was like to have people who cared. "I don't have money for the treatment," she admitted quietly. "Then it's a good thing I do," Richard said. "And before you start protesting, it's not charity, it's not pity, it's what you do for family. And you, Emily Johnson, are part of this family whether you like it or not." "But..." "No buts," Tyler interrupted. "You're going to accept our help. You're going to get the treatment, and you're going to get better. Because I lost my mother 3 years ago, and I'm not going to lose you too." Emily began to cry. And this time, they weren't tears of fear or pain. They were tears of gratitude, of recognition that she wasn't alone, that she had people who cared. The treatment started the following week. It was difficult, sometimes painful, and Emily had days when she could barely get out of bed. But Richard was always there, taking her to appointments, holding her hand during difficult procedures, making her laugh when she needed it most. Tyler also proved to be an unexpected support. He took on many of the project tasks, freeing Emily to focus on her recovery. And on the days when she felt better, he took her to see the progress of the renovation of the space that would be the headquarters of the Hope Project. Olivia became a constant companion too. The young woman had a special way of brightening the room, of making Emily forget for a few moments that she was sick. "You know," Olivia said one afternoon as they were having tea in the garden, "Tyler talks about you a lot." "He does. He does. Says you saved his family. That you were the one who showed him and his father that they still had each other." "I just did what I promised to do." "No, you did more than that. You loved this family, and they love you too. Especially Mr. Richard." Emily felt her face blush. "Is it that obvious?" "It is, but in a beautiful way. You look at each other like two people who found something precious and are afraid of losing it. I really am afraid. Of losing everything. Of losing him. Of Tyler. Of this life we built together." "Then you're going to fight. You're going to get this treatment, you're going to get better, and you're going to live this life you deserve." Olivia's words echoed in Emily's mind during the difficult days that followed. When the pain was too strong, when the treatment seemed impossible to bear, she remembered that she had something to fight for. She had a family. There was love. There was a possible future. Slowly, the treatments began to take effect. The symptoms lessened. Energy started to return. It wasn't fast or easy, but Emily was getting better. It was during her recovery that Tyler made a surprising announcement during one of the family dinners. "I have some news," he said, taking Olivia's hand, who was seated beside him. "What?" Richard asked. "Olivia and I are officially dating, and I want to thank you, Emily." "Thank me? Why?" "Because if you hadn't confronted me that night, if you hadn't shown me that I was behaving like an idiot, I never would have changed. I never would have started working on the project. I never would have met Olivia. So thank you for not giving up on me, even when I did everything to push you away." Emily felt her eyes fill with tears once again. "You don't have to thank me. I made a promise to your mother, and more than that, I learned to care about you, about both of you." "And we care about you," Richard added, taking Emily's hand on the table. "Very much." The moment was broken by Ruth, who entered the room with a tray of desserts and a smile from ear to ear. "Sorry to interrupt this beautiful moment, but I brought the pudding that Mrs. Catherine used to love. I think she would be happy to see all of you like this, together and happy." "She really would," Richard agreed. "Catherine always wanted this house to be full of love and joy. It took some time, but I think we finally managed to honor her wish." The inauguration of the Hope Project was scheduled for 3 months later. Emily was already much better, the treatment showing positive results. The doctors were optimistic about a full recovery. The day of the inauguration was emotional. The space was beautiful, transformed from an empty building into a welcoming place full of possibilities. There were rooms for psychological care, a space for workshops and lectures, a small library, and a kitchen where meals would be prepared for those in need. Dozens of people attended: partners, volunteers, future beneficiaries, local authorities. Richard gave an emotional speech about Catherine and how that project was the fulfillment of her dream. Tyler spoke about the importance of looking beyond ourselves and helping those going through difficult times. His transformation was visible. From the arrogant and bitter young man, he had become a compassionate and dedicated man. Emily also gave a speech, talking about the need to care not only for the body, but also for the mind and heart, about how all of us, at some point, need support, and about how beautiful it is when we extend a hand to someone who is falling. At the end of the event, when everyone had left and only the family remained in the space, Richard asked for everyone's attention. "There's something I'd like to do," he said. "Something I've been thinking about for a while." He turned to Emily, who was by his side. "Emily, in the last few months, you've become the most important person in my life. You brought light back to our family. You showed me that it's possible to love again, even after such a great loss. You turned my son into a better man. And above all, you made me remember what it is to live, not just exist." Emily felt her heart race. "Richard, I know we're still getting to know each other in some ways. I know you're still in treatment. I know there's a lot ahead. But I also know that I don't want to spend another day without being sure that you know how much I love you." Richard knelt, taking a small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple but beautiful ring with a discreet stone. "Emily Johnson, will you marry me?" The room fell silent. Olivia had her hands on her face, her eyes shining. Tyler had a huge smile. Ruth, who had appeared silently, was crying. Emily looked at Richard, at that man who had become so special to her. She thought of Catherine, of the promise she had made, of everything that had happened over the past 3 years. And then she looked at Tyler, seeking final confirmation. "You should say yes," Tyler said with a smile. "Your mother would want you to say yes." Emily knelt too, coming to the same level as Richard. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The ring was placed on her finger, and then Richard kissed her for the first time. It was a sweet kiss, full of promises and hope. a kiss that sealed not only the love between them, but the union of a family that had learned to heal together. The following months were filled with preparations. The wedding would be simple, just close family and dear friends. Emily wanted something intimate that reflected who they truly were, not a spectacle. But before the wedding, there was another important event. Emily successfully completed her treatment. The doctors confirmed she was cured, that she could live a normal and healthy life. The news was celebrated with a special dinner where tears of joy were shed and toast after toast was made. 2 second chances, Richard said, raising his glass. To promises kept, Tyler added. To love that heals, Emily finished. The wedding day finally arrived. It was a spring morning with a blue sky and the sun shining. The ceremony would be held in the garden of the mansion, the same garden where Richard had first confessed his feelings. Emily wore a simple yet elegant dress, white with lace details. Her hair was down in soft waves. She was radiant, not just from the happiness of the day, but from the health she had regained. The one who walked her down the aisle was Tyler. He had insisted, saying it would be an honor. And when Emily asked about her own father, he simply replied, "You gave me a father back. Let me give you this." The ceremony was conducted by a family friend who was a celebrant. Words were spoken about love, about overcoming, about families that are formed not just by blood, but by choice. When it came time for the vows, Richard was the first to speak. "Emily, when Catherine passed, I thought I had lost my ability to love. I buried myself in work. I distanced myself from my son. I lived like a ghost in my own life. But then you appeared. With your kindness, your strength, your determination to honor a promise, you showed me that the heart can love more than once, that we can honor the past while building a future. I promise to be the best husband I can be for you. I promise to stand by your side on good days and bad. I promise to never run from my emotions again. And I promise to love you every day of my life." Emily wiped away tears before beginning her own vows. "Richard, when I met Catherine, she told me about the love of her life. She described a good man, hard-working, dedicated to his family, and she asked me to look after that man when she could no longer be there. I never imagined that, in keeping that promise, I would find my own love. You showed me that it's possible to be strong and vulnerable at the same time, that we can carry our scars and still open our hearts. I promise to honor Catherine's memory by being the best partner I can be for you. I promise to care for the family we've built. I promise to stand by your side always, and I promise to love you with all my heart every day of my life." The rings were exchanged, and then the celebrant declared them husband and wife. The kiss was met with enthusiastic applause from the few guests present. The reception was small but joyful. There was music, dancing, delicious food prepared by Betty. Ruth cried the entire day, tears of happiness at seeing that family finally reunited and happy. It was during the party that Emily found herself alone for a few moments in the garden. She looked up at the starry sky and whispered softly, "Thank you, Catherine, for trusting me, for giving me this family, for somehow knowing that this was what I needed as much as they did." "She knew," a voice said behind her. Emily turned and saw Tyler approaching, Olivia by his side. "Knew? My mother had a way of seeing people, of looking beyond the obvious. She saw in you someone who needed a family as much as we needed you. That's why she chose you." She was very wise. She was. And if she were here today, she'd be happy. Happy to see my father smiling again. Happy to see me transformed. Happy to know that the promise you made to her went beyond what anyone could have imagined. Emily hugged Tyler, that young man who had been so difficult at first, but who was now like a son to her. "Thank you for accepting me," she said. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he replied. The following months brought more changes. Emily officially stopped being an employee and became the lady of the house, although she kept all the former staff, especially Mrs. Ruth, whom she considered a second mother. The Hope Project grew beyond expectations. They helped dozens of people each week, offering not only psychological support but also professional training workshops, support groups for various topics, and meals for those in need. Tyler became the official coordinator of the project, working side by side with Olivia. The two complemented each other perfectly. Tyler, with his pragmatism and management skills, inherited from his father, Olivia, with her empathy and experience in community work. One day, almost a year after the wedding, Tyler made an announcement during the weekly family dinner, which had become a sacred tradition. "Olivia and I have some news," he said, intertwining his fingers with hers. "Are you getting married?" Emily asked excitedly. "That too," Tyler smiled. "But there's something else. Olivia is pregnant." The room erupted in celebration. Richard hugged his son tightly. Emily hugged Olivia. Mrs. Ruth came out from the kitchen already crying, having heard the news. "Catherine would have been a grandmother," Richard said with a choked voice. "She would have loved it." "She's happy wherever she is," Emily said softly, "and she'll protect this baby from wherever she is." "We want to ask one thing," Olivia said. "If it's a girl, we want to name her Catherine, in honor of the one who started it all." Emily and Richard looked at each other, their eyes shining with emotion. "She would have loved that," Richard said. Tyler and Olivia's wedding took place 3 months later, a joyful celebration that brought together both families and everyone involved with the Hope Project. Emily was the matron of honor, and Richard the best man, a symbol of how that family had restructured and grown. When little Catherine was born, it was a moment of tears and joy. The baby had her father's dark eyes and her mother's curly hair. She came into the world surrounded by love, with a family that had learned the value of supporting each other. Emily held little Catherine in her arms, rocking her gently as she looked out the hospital window. Richard was by her side, his arm around her shoulders. "Do you think she's proud?" Emily asked quietly. "Catherine up there." "I'm sure she is," Richard replied. "She trusted you to take care of us, and you did more than that. You gave us a family back. You taught us to love again. You turned pain into something beautiful. We did it together. Me, you, Tyler, Olivia, Mrs. Ruth, everyone. It was a joint effort." "It was. But you were the catalyst. If it weren't for that night, when you confronted Tyler, none of this would have happened." Emily thought back to that night, years ago, when she had finally reached her limit. When she had spoken harsh but necessary words. When she had risked everything because of a promise. "You know what's funny," she said. "I came to that house thinking I was doing a favor, that I was fulfilling a promise out of duty. But in the end, I was the one who gained the most. I gained a family. I gained love. I gained purpose. I gained a life I never imagined possible." "Then we're even," Richard smiled, "because you gave us exactly the same thing." They stayed there for a few more minutes, watching little Catherine sleep peacefully, surrounded by the love of a family that had been broken and then rebuilt, stronger than before. 2 years passed. The Hope Project expanded, opening a second unit in another neighborhood. Tyler and Olivia were raising little Catherine with all the love and dedication and were already talking about having more children. Emily and Richard lived a quiet and happy life. She had returned to work as a psychologist, seeing some private patients, but dedicating most of her time to the project. Richard had reduced his workload at the company, delegating more and spending more time with the family. It was during a family dinner, now expanded to include Olivia and little Catherine, that Tyler made an observation. "Have you ever thought about how crazy all this is?" he said. "It started with a nanny confronting a spoiled heir, and look where we are now." "It wasn't crazy," Emily corrected with a smile. "It was fate, or Catherine working her mysteries from above." "Could be both," Olivia suggested. "Sometimes fate needs a little human push." "And you gave quite a push that night," Richard said, looking at Emily affectionately. "You could have hated me for firing you, but I was lucky. Or, as Emily said, Catherine was working her mysteries." "She really was," Mrs. Ruth said, entering the room with dessert. The elderly housekeeper had become an official part of the family, always present at dinners, always offering her wisdom and affection. Mrs. Catherine always knew what she was doing. Even when we didn't understand, she knew. "Mrs. Ruth is right," Tyler agreed. "My mother had a plan, and that plan was to bring the right people together at the right time. Emily, you, Olivia, even little Catherine here. It's all part of something bigger." "So what do we do now?" Emily asked. "And do we keep growing? Do we keep building?" "We keep living," Richard said simply. "We keep loving. We keep honoring her memory by being the best versions of ourselves, and we stay together because that's what matters in the end. Not money, not success, not material things. What matters are the people we love and who love us back." Little Catherine chose that moment to wake up and start crying. Olivia immediately went to pick her up, but the baby kept crying. It was when Emily reached out her arms that the little one calmed down. "She adores you," Olivia said with a smile. "The feeling is mutual," Emily replied, gently rocking the baby. Tyler watched the scene, Emily with his daughter in her arms, Richard beside her with a smile on his face, Olivia leaning against him, Mrs. Ruth watching everything with satisfaction, and felt deep gratitude. That was his family. Not perfect, but true. Not without scars, but healed. Not without a painful past, but with a bright future ahead. And it had all started with a promise. A simple promise made by a dying woman to a friend she barely knew. A promise that had turned into love, into healing, into family. Catherine Harrison had passed away 3 years earlier, but her legacy lived on. In the husband who had learned to love again, in the son who had become a compassionate man, in the granddaughter who carried her name, in the social project that fulfilled her dreams, and in the woman who had honored her promise in a way that went far beyond what anyone could imagine. The years kept passing, bringing more joys and challenges. Tyler and Olivia had 2 more children, expanding the family even further. Emily and Richard adopted a girl a few years later, a child who had arrived at the Hope Project with a difficult story and had stolen their hearts. The Hope Project continued to grow but never lost its essence, being a place of welcome, healing, and hope for those who needed it most. Hundreds of people passed through its doors over the years, each taking a piece of that love that had started it all. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, now elderly, Emily and Richard were sitting in the mansion's garden. Mrs. Ruth had passed away years before, but her presence was still felt in every corner of that house. The grandchildren ran across the lawn, their laughter filling the air. "Do you regret anything?" Richard asked, holding Emily's hand. "No," she answered without hesitation. "Not a single moment. And you?" "Neither do I. Every choice, every difficulty, every tear brought us here. And here is exactly where I want to be." "With me?" "With you. Always with you." They stayed there, watching the family they had built together, a family that had begun in pain but had flourished in love. A family that proved that second chances exist, that the heart can love more than once, that the most important promises are those we make with the heart. And somewhere, Emily liked to imagine, Catherine was watching it all with a smile, satisfied to know that her last wish had been fulfilled not just in letter, but in spirit. Happy to see the people she loved finally at peace, finally happy, finally living the life she had always wanted for them. The promise had been fulfilled. The family had been saved, and love had won in the end, as it always should. End of story. And you? What did you think of this story of overcoming and love? Have you experienced something similar, or know someone who transformed their life because of a promise? Leave your opinion in the comments with sincere words. Do you believe Emily and Richard made the right choices? We would love to read your point of view. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories.